I'm Megan McDonough, and I am so thrilled to be joining you here today as we discuss, what does it mean to live into whole person well-being? In other words, we can study the science of human flourishing, but it's not nearly as powerful studying human flourishing as it is living into it every day with our choices, with our actions, how we show up in the world. And so today is really about that question. How do we live into whole person well-being today? Like, not learn more, we can study more, but really how do we make choices today towards that? So this is going to be a time of reflection, a time of experiencing, and then a time of talking. So first, a little introduction of who I am. For those of you who may not know me, I am Megan McDonough. I am the founder of Wellbeing Institute, which is an educational organization that focuses on positive psychology and the science of living well. So without any further ado, let's start with the centering. And as we go into this, I invite you to actually get a pen and a piece of paper so that when we're done with our centering, that I'm going to ask you some reflections and some things to think about that we're going to spend a minute or two afterwards to journal about. Yeah? So whatever is comfortable for you. You can leave your eyes open or shut. You can sit, you can lay down, you can stand. Doesn't much matter. What does it take for you to show up fully present now? So I invite you to take a nice, long, deep breath in and a big exhale. Another deep breath in. And a nice exhale. Last time, one more breath in. Big exhale. And as you let go of the breath, let go of the need to control or fix or change or do anything, and just simply notice what's true for you in this moment. So noticing awareness dropping down into your body, noticing your toes and your ankles. Awareness of the calf, the knee, the shins, the thighs, the hips. Awareness filling the hips and the belly, the heart and the ribs. Awareness flowing down the sleeves of both arms, the shoulders, the upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, each of your wonderful fingers. Be aware of the volume of both arms. Being aware of the face, the inside of the skull. Being aware of this body from the top of the crown of your head to the very tips of your toes. What is your experience in this body right now? Just mentally taking notes. Noting physical sensations. Noticing the space within, or maybe the constriction of some places. Noticing the place and experience of being in this body, in this moment, and the space you displace around you. The feelings that are present. A high energy or low energy. The quality of your breathing. Is it long and deep or short and shallow? And as you notice your experience right here and right now, You may also want to reflect upon the experience of your life right now. How is it to be in your life at this moment? Smooth or ragged? Unsettled or settled? Sure or uncertain? And as you notice your experience, allow it to become aware of more. What parts of your body are missing in your awareness? You're aware of your earlobes or the space between your fingers, or your belly button or the lower back. Becoming aware in your life. Are there places in your life that are out of reach or hidden or missing at present? And last reflection, as you notice your experience and what you're aware of, self-reflect on what do you want this life to include? What's really important to you in this one precious human life? What brought you to here right now in this webinar? Taking a deep breath in and a big exhale. One more deep breath in. Big exhale. And invite those eyes to open, saying hello to the outside world and to your fellow travelers here today. Hi. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Megan McDonough, the founder of Wellbeing Institute. And today we're talking about living into whole person well-being. And that short sort of centering that we just did, I asked you a couple of questions about what is your experience? Can you be aware of more? Why are you here and what's important to you in this life? Let's just spend a moment and jot down some of the sort of salient things or questions that arose out of that, 5-minute meditation. Take out a pen, piece of paper, write down a word or two, a paragraph, a sentence, what came up for you. And as you write, you're fine to continue. For those of you who are on live versus listening to the recording, write in a word or two into the chat with either a question, an aha moment, something else that came up for you during that meditation. What did you notice? And yes, if it's easier for others to speak, I would love to hear your voice. Just unmute yourself and share. There's a sense of quiet in the room. Either you had no insights or you have nothing you want to share, or we're playing shy. I don't know which it is, but it feels like there's a quietness that means I'm just going to continue on. Thank you, Diane, saying curiosity about the question, what's missing in your life? And so that's an interesting question. And a valid answer is nothing. And a valid answer is something. It's just an inquiry into our present experience. So thank you for that. If anyone else wants to share, feel free to chat or just unmute yourself at any point. So the questions that I asked you what's your experience in this moment? Be aware of how that experience plays out in everyday life. And you reflect upon what brought you here. Yes, you have your, Sheila, I see your hand raising. Hello, did you have a comment?
Hi, good morning. So nice to be here. I'm fussing around with this iPad of my husband's, so just trying to get used to this system. What kept coming up for me was, well, being distracted with other things, which is probably usual, but this strong awareness and feeling about how so much of in my life I've survived. Like I've been hearing people talk, last week and in other forums, people achieved things, people accomplished things, were driven to do various things. And for me, it's just like all I did for so much, and maybe still doing some of that, is just survive. I was just trying to survive. I was just trying to make it to the next, keep my head above water. It's been been the norm feeling throughout my whole life. Mm-hmm. And so where I am now, I don't want to just keep surviving. I have come to understand that there's a lot more opportunity in life, joy, freedom. I've had some of it, but anyways, that's why I'm here. I don't want to just keep surviving and being kind of defaulting back to these old ways of thinking about myself and the world, which was, not safe, negative, frightening. I am not good enough. This is all my default stuff. I've been in therapy forever and a day, and I've looked a lot in me, but I'm looking for something to help me actually make it more sustainable. So really glad to be here, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. First of all, thank you for just sharing the humanness that we can all relate to in one aspect or another. The sense of what you're speaking to of surviving reminds me of, I went to this happiness summit. When was it? It was back in March. And I was a keynote speaker, and I was watching speaker after speaker going up and talking about how they used the pandemic time. I wrote 10 books. I reconnected with my this or that. I revamped my entire house. I had great connection. And all I kept thinking is, for many people, and myself included, it was all I could do to survive some days. That instead of always talking about growing and becoming more into this self and a better person and writing 10 books and producing this and building that, that in and of itself, if that's the only thing that we're measuring success by, it becomes exhausting. And so I think of this work of living into whole person well-being is not an ignoring this sense of life at times feels overwhelming, and life at times does feel like, now I recognize I'm in a point of survival versus thriving, but also opening up the lens of our awareness to what else is there that we don't see because of how we're using our visions, our view, and others. And it's not an act of just creating this good self-efficacy, because much of what we thought about for happiness was about self-development, self-growth, self-confidence, self-esteem. And part of that is true. Like there is a part of it where we have personal choices and we build into these and we understand how we're seeing. But a part of it is completely false to think that that is done on its own and it's all mine. It's all on my individual shoulders versus an understanding of my environment impacts that. Who I'm talking to influences that. The relationships that I'm in influencing that. Nature itself influences that. So what is my relatedness, not only to myself, but my relatedness to others around me? And that's sort of what I wanted to point out today, because I promised in the write-up that I would give you 3 specific tools that I think are absolutely fundamental when we talk about human flourishing. And none of those 3 are ignoring the truth of how we're feeling in this moment. In fact, it's a actual clear seeing of what's true for us in this moment. So thank you so much for setting the stage in that way. Just want to see what other note came up. Aida or Ida, I'm not sure which way you say your name, said that suggestion for how to use this material without turning into an endless self-improvement progress. Yes, doesn't it feel that way? That is a beautiful way to say it, Aida, that if we feel like life is always about climbing the mountain, ooh, I have a gut, because we never actually get there. It's never, ever done. While we're living, this human experience isn't meant to be static, or is it meant to grow into some like perfect caricature of what it means to be human, right? It actually holds the whole. I love how you said that, Aida. That is perfect. Anyone else have a comment before I kind of move on? Alrighty then. So I want to just share with you sort of a personal journey of my own, not a historical story, just like a common thread of my life that brings me to this point here now. There's always been this question for me: what does it mean to live this human life well? And if we look at the poet Mary Oliver, she would call it this one precious human life. Now, when I think back to when I was younger, I didn't consciously pose that question. As a young child, I think most of us just live into that one precious human life, like completely, fully, just an embodied youngster of loving life, right? We're not cognitively thinking, what do I need to do today? What goals do I need to reach? What aim do I have to have? Did I do my exercise today? Did I feed the kids? Did I go food shopping? No, as a kid was sort of living into this truth of what it means to live well. But as we get older and we sort of develop this sense of self within an environment of others, we begin to ask questions, or others ask questions of us, like, what do you want to do in your life? What do you want to be when you grow up? Where are you going? These questions, along with sort of the responsibilities that happen as we grow up, getting a job, getting bills, earning money, spending money, maybe having a family, maybe struggling with pain or difficulties or challenges. We realize that life isn't simple. It's complicated. It's kind of messy at times. For me, that question, how do I live well, started to be answered back when I went to school for nuclear medicine, because I thought to myself, oh, it would be really interesting. I was studying biology as an undergraduate. It'd be really interesting to study biology and see these natural systems, and then also to study the own biology of the human body. So I studied nuclear medicine, which is a type of diagnostic imaging. And I figured that once I understood my physiology and my biology and what it means to be human, from a liver, heart, kidney, brain, spleen, all of these other pieces, that, okay, I'd understand the question. Well, it turns out that healthcare actually doesn't have all the answers. Wow, I know that's like a big aha, but really, healthcare is more like trying to fix what is broken in the human condition. What's wrong? What's not working? How do we prescribe a pill or a surgery or a manipulation or movement of the physical body so that we don't have disease? Well, not having disease is not flourishing. Fixing an illness doesn't mean that we automatically move into a happy life. We all know people who are very healthy physically, but are having a miserable damn life. And we also know people who are maybe terminally ill and are actually living their best life. And in some sense, just having such deep, meaningful moments in the life they're leading today. So, spoiler, healthcare doesn't have all the answers. Is that a surprise to anybody? No. Well, so eventually I realized this. And I remember the day that I realized this, actually. I was sitting in, at this point, I moved up the corporate ladder and I was in the executive conference room, worked at DuPont at the time. And I remember sitting in that meeting with a good job, with wonderful people doing great work. And I wrote on my notepad and I scratched the words, "This is killing me." And it was because a piece of myself wasn't being expressed. Like there was something else that wanted to emerge. This was 20 years ago. This was not actually more than that because it's 2022. This was back in 2019 because I left my corporate work in 2020. At the time I was had begun practicing yoga when I was pregnant with my first child. She was born back in 95. So I had been practicing yoga for 5 years. And when I was at that meeting and I noticed that realization that this is killing me, this work isn't expressing my full self, as wonderful as it is, how great the people are, it wasn't complete. That in fact, the awareness through yoga helped me see in that moment the clarity that there was more to life than that. And that's why I always start with a meditation. In fact, the foundational piece of what I want to share with you today, the number one tool, is actually paying attention to your own experience. And my goodness, there are so many subtle ways that your experience slides by your awareness. And sometimes it takes conversations like these, or having it being pointed out by others, or honing the way in which you're using your awareness and building that muscle of sensing what is true for me now, what is happening now. That is an amazing, amazing source of truth and foundation for you as a human being. That whole person well-being is not something that someone else gives you. It's not something that you can go buy in a book. It's not something that is bequeathed to you. It is your birthright. And the job of a lifetime is opening up to the truth of what's already there in this experience right here and right now. And so part of me is even as I'm talking is noticing, oh, look at I'm leaning forward. I feel excited about talking about this. I'm noticing there's a slight clench in my thighs because there's a little bit of tension in my legs, holding myself up. There's like a gazillion things in this moment that you can, what do you notice? What do you notice in this moment of your truth? What is your experience that's fleeting by? That is never one and done, right? When we talk about not wanting to survive, but thrive, this point of the multitudes of data that's coming in to us or that we can be open to in every moment is astounding. So this idea of what's my experience now, in that meeting, it was the experience of the realization that this is killing me. That healthcare, the path I had been on, the self I saw myself to be, like there wasn't a pinnacle there, damn it all. I thought maybe as I went through this, there would be a pinnacle. I got it. I got this life figured out. There I am. No. Now there comes a point in all of our lives that we realized who we were is no longer, but we're not yet seeing or even understanding what's to come. Now, the anthropologist Victor Turner calls this liminal space. Jack Mesereau in Adult Learning calls this space disorienting dilemmas. So that was my disorienting dilemma back in, and I have many of them. I have so many stories about disorienting dilemmas. There is no, like, look at, even this morning, I was saying, okay, what am I going to talk about today? Like, this is my binder of disorienting dilemmas. Do you see how big this is? There is no shortage of disorienting dilemmas. I'm pointing out one. And by the way, when you get over that one, you're not done. They're just, it's like life is this big unfolding, right? Oh gosh. It would be funny if it wasn't so painful at times when you're going through it. Yeah. So that was my sort of inflection point. Whether you call that a liminal space, whether you call that a disorienting dilemma, whether you call it the hero or heroine's journey, like the mythologist Joseph Campbell talks about. Sometimes we hit these inflection points when we get a cancer diagnosis or a life-threatening illness, or we lose someone that we love, or we lose a job, or retire and wonder what the heck is the rest of my life going to look like if I don't have a job. Or when our kids leave to college and we have an empty nest and we've built this sense of self around being a mom. And now all of a sudden there's no one there to mother. Or we've lived with a story of ourselves just as a survivor and want to live into this new self as a thriving, flourishing human. And we don't know what that looks like because for the past 20 years, we've been living a self of surviving. It is a redefinition. And by the way, this sense of self is constructed. You know, there isn't a self living inside of us that's, you know, the self. It is a mental construct of who we see ourselves to be. So we can reshape that sense of self, but it's not done overnight. And it's not done from, oh, now I'm this, now I'm not, let me move on to my next self. There's a process of unfolding. So that's the first tidbit I wanted to share, was this sense of being aware of our experience. And so for me, that question of what does it mean to live well started in healthcare, moved on to deepen into yoga. And when I left the corporate world, yeah, I actually moved deeper into yoga. I became a yoga teacher. I went back into the corporate world as a trainer and consultant, talking about how important mindfulness was in the corporate space, how important it was to be fully present for ourselves and others. And I was fortunate enough to continue to ask the question, what does it mean to live well? And I guess I wasn't fortunate enough. I just always have that question. Okay, I understand from healthcare and I'm really digging into my yoga. And I was doing some online work and building some online platforms. And I had the good fortune of Kripalu, which some of you might be aware of, which is the largest yoga retreat center in North America, asked me to come and build their online learning platform. And this is when Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar and I built the experience of the certificate in positive psychology back in 2011. And I confess that before I ran that with Tal, well, number one, I had never heard of Tal. If you've never heard of Tal, he is one of the leaders in the field of positive psychology. He's one of the pioneers, thought leaders. He comes from Harvard. He taught the largest class there. And I did not know who he was. And not only did I not know who Tal was, I didn't know what positive psychology was. So here I had this background in nuclear medicine. I had this experience in yoga, mind-body work. And that question, that thread was still, it's still alive and speak today. What does it mean to live well? And when I started listening to and learning about and really taking a huge deep dive into positive psychology, I realized that now there is this wonderful field, like neuroscience is doing right now with how the brain works, that's actually studying the question, not how do we fix what's broken, not how do we just have experiences from a mind-body perspective, like the wisdom traditions teach us, but how do we connect those pieces together such that with the rigors of evidence-based science, we're asking, what does it mean to flourish as a human being? How can we study that empirically? A lot of this sort of work was done early in humanistic psychology that sort of didn't have the gravitas to stick because a lot of the evidence-based work sort of got diffused and went in a lot of different directions. But Marty Seligman brought it back up to the forefront. And I realized with this question, how do we live well, that there was sciences that could inform us, that could give us really tangible language and really tangible practices to use. Which brings us to the second point that I want to share with you, which is not only do we have to know our own experience to really ground ourselves in the truth of what we're living in this moment, not ignore it, not deny it, but also to move into awareness, to ask, what else is there? To ask and move in with a sense of inquiry that even though this is our experience, that there may be more to it than what I'm experiencing right now. Does that make sense? So in many ways, yoga and the mind-body techniques gave me more insight onto the healthcare, which gave me more insights into myself. The same with positive psychology. As we learn the tools and become aware of them, they're like allowing us to see ourselves in more than the dimension of the brain creating this sense of self. So it's almost like we can reshape who we become as we understand how that self is constructed. I got a question about how is the last name of the Harvard man who was a father of positive psychology. Well, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar co-founded with me Wholebeing Institute back in 2013. He's the one that taught at Harvard. He's a pioneer in the field. For the most part, the term of father of positive psychology goes to Dr. Marty Seligman from UPenn. He's the one who, when he was the APA president back in '98, or maybe it was actually earlier than that, wrote a position paper as the incoming president of the APA that it was time for psychology to study what was right in the human condition, not just the pathologies and neuroses, the anxiety. I hope that answers your question, Emily. I got a comment also about liking the disorienting dilemmas in my overflowing binder of disorienting dilemmas. No shortage of them. Thank you for those direct messages, guys. I'm just going to pause because what I've given you so far, and I just want to make clear 2 key points. Be aware of your experience, it's foundational, and be open to inquire more. This is sort of the radically receptive stance of life. What can I learn? What can I pull in? How can I shift my perspective? How can I learn more? Are there any questions before I tell you number 3? You can feel free to unmute and just ask out loud if you'd like. I take it we are all set, so let's move on. If we go through life and just really focus on our experience, and in this day, ask ourselves, what else is there? What else can I do? We're actually can feel like we're just not moving forward, that we just keep passively receiving all of this stuff. And so this next third step is actually key, and it's self-reflecting on who you want to be. There's a whole story behind this about but the basic fundamental piece of this is to start creating in one's own mind a concept called the best possible self. This self-reflection of not what do we want to do, but how do we want to be? Like, what does this life stand for you? It's so profound to ask oneself that question and then ground your actions every day in that step. It's not just about who do you want to be, it's how do you want to be? Not just what do you want to do, it's how do I want to be? The self-reflection. And that answer is going to be completely unique to each one of us, because the truth of our experience and the awareness of asking more and the groundedness of who we want to be, how we want to be, is the work of a lifetime. So what does that mean? How do I want to be? Part of my work when I go through all of these disorienting dilemmas for myself is coming back to this best possible self. And by the way, part of the work that we do in the certificate in wholebeing positive psychology is we don't just pull this best possible self out of the future and say, oh, this is my new goal. This is like how I'm heading up, because that defeats the purpose of understanding how the self is constructed. Instead, we go through a process by looking at, it's a whole sense of possible selves. Like in our mind's eye, we hold the future in our mind's eye of all of the possible futures. Sometimes we wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning and we're worried about a possible self in the future that we're afraid of, that we don't want to happen. You know, I'll end up really sick. I won't be happy. I'll end up, whatever those stories are that wake you up at 2 at night that you're really afraid of. That possible self exists in your mind's eye, right? But there are also a possible self of your deepest longings and what is it you hope for and yearn for, not in a mental way, but the deepest level of your soul. Yes, this is what I yearn for. These are what's known as possible selves. So we have our current self, we have our possible selves, and then we have this like construction in the future of possible selves in the future that we decide upon, reflect upon. This is what I stand for. Every day when I'm going through these disorienting dilemmas, this is my grounding. For me, it's 3 values. We go through a whole process in the certificate program to come up with this for yourself. But for mine, 20 years ago, I came up with this when I left the corporate world, and it's to live, to love, and to learn. That I'm going to live fully and dive in and really use my zest and bravery in this day and meet it as I can, to love myself and others with an open heart as to the best of my ability, and to learn, because quite frankly, I knew I was going to do number 1 and number 2 completely imperfectly. So if I didn't include learning in part of the values of who I was, I would be continually self-flagellating myself for not being as perfect as that possible self in the future. So I'd ask you, like, what brought you here today, and what are you thinking of? Like Sheila related to earlier, thriving. This notion of flourishing. And if we dove even deeper into that, what does flourishing look like for you? Energy, joy, I think was one of the words that she used. And then what happens is this last step of taking action every day and choosing every day in a way that enlivens that grounded self-reflection, is you begin to circle back and have new experiences. So if we're looking for more joy in our lives, and we begin to notice the little tiny sparkles of joy with the sunrise, or the sparkles of joy in a stranger's smile, that changes our experience such that the experience of joy increases because we notice it more, we're paying more attention to it. We're cultivating within our own self a way of looking at our experience that's different. And that is rewiring the brain, is rewiring how we're noticing the day, experiencing the day, constructing the emotions of the day. If we don't do any of the above, I listened to Heniki's webinar from last week where he talked about perspective. That we have a tendency as humans to notice what is wrong and broken. It's the negativity bias. It is so ingrained in us that too, we tend to miss how we're subtly feeling down on ourselves because we didn't go for that walk, or we ate the chocolate after lunch, and we miss the fact that we giggled with our grandchild, or we had a nice salad for dinner. Like everything good is down here, and everything that we think we did wrong is up here. So if we don't come at this day with a conscious awareness of where we're going, we will focus on these things down here and miss all the good up here. Be aware of our experience, open our awareness to more, self-reflect on the values of how we want to be. Those are the three. And then that third doesn't go anywhere else unless we do the fourth, which is to take action, to choose. And they're not big actions like let's climb Mount Everest. They're very small things, they're very continually small unfolding of being here now. I think I said what I wanted to say in terms of those three tools. I hope they're helpful for you today. And what I want to share is sort of a visual. I tend to work a lot with metaphors and pictures because sometimes what I'm talking about is very, we can try and have it in a cognitive way, what I'm saying. So I'm going to share my screen and share with you some slides. Why is this? Sorry about that. Hold on. Let me fix that. Okay, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Great, thank you, thank you. So every once in a while, I take myself on a retreat day. I do something different. I get out in front of Zoom, get out into the real world. And on this particular retreat day, I had taken myself to Jamestown, which is in Rhode Island. And there's a really adorable little museum there, or a little arts called the Jamestown Art Center. And the artist there was Tom Denninger. That's what was being displayed. And this is his artwork. And I've got to tell you, when I walked in, this was huge. I mean, this was huge in the center of the room. So when you walked in, it's really visually all you saw. I was perplexed. I kept asking myself, what is this? I don't get it. What's happening here? I mean, if you look at these pieces, in many ways, it's disturbing, right? We have these little Barbie dolls and Connect Four game and little plastic pieces of, like the G.I. Joe fighters and the squishy teddy bears and Pokemon. Like, what? I don't get this. So I could have just walked away. Like, I don't get this. It's interesting. There's a lot to look at, but what is it? But I remember walking around the entire piece because I kept asking myself, what is this? I just don't get it. There was nothing really describing it there. I was just visually seeing this huge thing. And each side that I walked on gave me sort of a different view of all of these sort of disjointed parts. I see, here's a screwdriver, or those little tracks for the matchboxes, Lego pieces. Again, I don't get it. I don't get it. This was particularly disturbing to me. My daughter had one of these horses. I remember her little plastic horse. She loved it dearly when she was young. And there was an arrow pushed through his behind. I don't get it. What is this? What is this thing? I continued to walk 360 degrees around this art installation. And then I walked around to the final section of it. And I was intently staring at it. And as I was walking around, I noticed a very strange thing happening. All of the pieces started to come together in a different view. The pieces weren't moving, but my perspective was moving around it. And so that perspective was bringing a new image to me that I had completely missed before. And here's what popped out at me as I made that final circle around this piece. Isn't that amazing? I mean, it was like a huge aha moment for me that all of these disparate pieces, all of these individual parts that made absolutely no sense on their own, no matter how closely I looked at it, the whole eluded me. The whole I could not see until I kept walking around and taking in more and more. And if you don't believe me that this is the same thing, you see, if you look at the bird's tail right at the very end, you can actually see the arrow from that horse poking out the back. This is this. These two are the same. These two are the same. This is that. That is this. When it comes to living into whole person well-being, it is being able to see all of the bits and pieces of ourselves, the parts we deem as broken, as useless, as not good enough, as wishing it were otherwise. All of that fits together into the whole of who we are. Boom, there's more to us than we see. Boom, there's a deeper aspect to this wholeness that we are. This is that. And that is our work at the Certificate in Wholebeing Positive Psychology. Just to bring it back to those of you who are interested in doing a deep dive into this work. The certificate is a 9-month journey to understand who we see ourselves to be, to explore the possibilities of other constructs of self, to aim towards a best possible self, to build habits towards that best possible self. And to do it in relationship with others. Like we're not learning this on our own, we're actually living into it together as a group. To understand the power of relationships and how to be in those relationships in a supportive way. And that includes in relationship to ourselves. And because life doesn't always go as it plans, to also build resilience and grit. And finally, then we can choose goals, right? I mean, sometimes I think we choose goals way too early in the process. After we go through all of those steps, then we choose goals that are meaningful to us. And we understand then how to work into them. And the very end of the certificate in positive psychology courses is where you present to the team what's compelling and enlivening to you about positive psychology. I wish you well. I'm so glad that you are here today. I'm going to pause in the last 8 minutes of our time together and see if there are any questions that you may have of me, any insights that you have of your own that you would like to share with the group, or just comments in general. Yes, Sheila, go right ahead.
I just want to say thank you. You provided such a clear, coherent framework today that really suits my way of thinking. You really helped me to kind of understand. I've been a few years now kind of touching base with the Wellbeing Institute. And so today you helped me to have a framework. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that I had seen that piece before that you had shared, but I got a totally different experience of it today. I saw that coming from and going to sign there that I didn't see last time. And what I got today was how disturbing and like ugly those pieces were, like really like, and then how it was so actually beautiful. Like that was new for me here today. So that's very hopeful. You know, there's been a lot of ugliness in my life and a lot of ugly parts I still perceive in myself.
Yeah.
Even not wanting to and knowing better, so to speak. So it's very powerful here today. I really appreciate, coming here and being here for this hour with you and with others for free. It's no small thing. I really appreciate that. So thank you. I'll be seeing whoever comes next Thursday and the Thursday after that, and in their certificate. Hiko last time helped me to realize I'm saying yes. I would like to say yes. I am saying yes. Been scared to say yes all my life. But here I am. So thank you all. And I look forward to more.
Thank you, Sheila. And there is something to be said about that. When I saw both the ugliness as I was watching and the disturbing, as you said, it was disturbing to see juxtaposed against the huge aha I got when I walked around the corner. It's like, whoa, yeah. And that's what we want to feel in our own life, even when we see the ugliness or the pieces that we don't like, that when we have this bigger vision and this bigger experience that's grounded, like, wow. This is pretty amazing. I'm pretty amazing. Like, can we hold that? That's spectacular. Thank you, Sheila. I was getting some questions about payment options. So those can all be directed towards Ubiquity. If there's a help desk there at Maytech that you could put in terms of who people should call or touch base with about the payment options that people have, that would be helpful. Great, thank you. And also there were some questions about registering for next week's program. So Maytech can put that into the chat group as well. I think that's it. Does anyone else have any comments? Who hasn't spoken yet that one wants to share something? I have a sense we're complete, yes? So with that, I invite you to take a nice deep breath in and a big exhale. One more deep breath in. Big exhale. And as we conclude today's program, I invite you to take some nugget with you. Like, what are you holding on to today, or taking action upon, or moving into? With that, it's been a complete blessing being here with you today. May this day be wonderful for you and yours. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Megan. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.